All right, Darren, what do you say we get started? And so maybe how we'll start is just tell a couple of stories about how we came to be involved in this program and the cloud in general. And Darren, I think it's pretty interesting how you got going in the cloud first.
Yeah, sure. So Cal Poly announced that we were going to migrate our on-premise data center to AWS about 2 years ago. And myself and the CIO at the time were interested in how we could lead that effort. And so the deputy CIO asked me if I would be willing to learn a little bit about AWS. And so I attended re:Invent, Amazon's biggest technical conference, and then basically studied and became certified as a solutions architect at that time to kind of learn a little bit about what Cal Poly had in store for it, and came back with that knowledge and ended up sharing that knowledge with the team of individuals that were going to lead that effort. And so we started running book club, we called it. We ran a study session where we shared the information we learned every day. We would do info sessions where we would do a sort of brown bag lunch and start sharing more and more about the cloud. And it became apparent pretty quickly that this journey that we're on right now was not unique to Cal Poly, and that many other institutions and companies were in fact headed in this direction. I mean, I had lunch last week with a company here in San Luis that's kind of going through the same journey. And so, Kurt and I had started teaching this foundations class through the College of Business and realized that it would be a great time to start a certificate program. I myself had a similar experience when I got out of school. I got a degree in physics and needed to learn some programming, so I took a C++ programming certificate at the University of Washington, and it was the same sort of structure. It was a 3-quarter series, each building on the next, and so Kurt and I started chatting more and more and said, hey, we should do something like this at Cal Poly. And so that's kind of the genesis of how the Cloud Professional Certificate Program was born.
And the story of how I came to the cloud was I actually had kind of a similar need, but I didn't know it at the time. And our situation, I'm a professor in industrial engineering here at Cal Poly, and our on-prem site is basically a computer lab with 30 identical PCs sitting on desktops. And I was tasked with teaching a new data analytics course, and so I wanted some new programs, some new applications installed on those networked PCs in that lab. And I got a lot of pushback from the IT administrator saying that's too much configuration for me to do. And I had known Darren a little bit, and I kind of mentioned my problem to Darren, and Darren said, oh, I have a solution. Call me back in a half hour and I'll show you how we could do this. And so a half hour later, Darren and I got online together, and he showed me an EC2 instance and how I could connect to it, and how I could load software on it, and how the students could use it. And it was from that point forward that I just was blown away at the technology and how available it is and how easy to use it is, how cheap it is. And so that started the path for me learning more and more about how cloud works. And Darren helped me teach this class. We did that for a couple of years together. We became pretty good friends, and we figured out how to teach this technology to others. And so that has just kind of piggybacked on each other. And we've come now to where we're ready to roll out a program that can make it widely available on some of the cloud technologies we've learned to teach here at Cal Poly. Maybe we'll take a quick break here, and before we move on, just see if there are any questions. So I see Logan's jumped on and Jay's there. And if you don't have a microphone, you could also just type it in the chat window there and we'd be able to see it. So let me just pause for a minute and see if there's any questions before we move on. Hello, Logan.
Sanat is back.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I had to drop out. I had to drop out a little bit earlier for something else.
No problem.
Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about the inconvenience.
Well, so you all are sitting in a Zoom session, and this is how we actually hold our synchronous class meetings. And so the way the program will work is we have some online, what we call asynchronous material. So there's online training, videos, slides that you go through. There's some online quiz assessments that happen, and you do those at whatever time of day or night you have time to look through those. And then we have 2 class meetings in the afternoon each week. And we get together like this, and Darren and I have prepared materials. We're accessible then for you to ask questions or things that didn't go right. We have lots of focus on the things that we think are the most important, the things we think you should focus on. And then we have lots of interactive lab activities. We call those challenge labs, and they kind of build on what the online activities are. There's some labs that you do on your own that are pretty straightforward. You just kind of follow the script and do what's asked of you. But our challenge labs are much more open-ended. They are, here's a task we want you to do, go out and figure it out. And so what we do is we try to balance all of those activities during the synchronous class meetings, giving you time to work, giving you time to get stuck and ask questions. And then we kind of call it a day, and you go off and you do your asynchronous activities again. Anything else to add there, Darren, in terms of how the flow of the materials go?
No, I just wanted to reemphasize the point you made about the lab. So, Kurt and I have been through these course materials before. We've had to learn other Amazon skills and taken other Amazon provided training. And the training they provide is very comprehensive, covers the services quite nicely. But the gap that we are really trying to fill is bridging sort of real world problem solving and actually sitting down at the keyboard and having to architect a solution from the material that you just were presented. And so, my first exposure was, okay, I learned all this stuff. I got certified. I went back and started to try to do stuff. And it was like, wait a minute, I don't remember how to do that. And the lab didn't really help me with that. And so the labs we've created really are real world experiences that are practical, applications that you'd have to build for a job or scenarios that you may come across in work. And so, not only will you have the background, the material, and all the sort of philosophy, but you'll get, some practical, things you can take home. We'll share all the source code. We'll share the CloudFormation templates with you to kind of, help you not only, learn the stuff, but apply it in a practical way. So we've had pretty good success. We teach these courses for, with the goal of being certified, and our certification rate is much higher than the average. Average is about 70%-ish, and so far Kurt and I are running about 82%. So I think some of those things that we do make a difference, and we're seeing that in the results of students, and we've had really good reviews and feedback, and we're constantly asking the students, what is it we can do to teach this class better. And so even though we've taught it 2 or 3 times now, we're still improving the way we deliver the course. So we're excited about it. We want to open it back up to questions. I don't know if Sanat or Logan or anyone else has any questions based on what you've heard so far. Happy to answer specific questions.
Sure, sounds good. So let's just pause for a minute and see if there's any questions out there. Well, having done online education like this a couple of times before, I'll just echo a couple questions that often come up. So one of them is, if you're a working person with a full-time job, sometimes you can't make all of the class meetings. And so the way we handle that is, of course, we want you to come, we want you to interact because we think it's a better way to learn and it's more effective, but it's inevitable when you have to miss meetings. And so what we do is we record these Zoom sessions like this, and then we just post those and make those available later. And all I do is I just kind of do a raw dump, and I upload that to YouTube. and YouTube then makes it accessible anytime. And usually what students do is they just kind of scrub through and look for the things, the highlights, and some of the things they want to listen to, but often they wouldn't listen to the entire session at one time. So that's kind of how we handle missed class meetings. No penalty for it. We understand it's part of your job and part of your life, but that's how you can make up or capture and learn the stuff that we talk about in class.
So Logan had a question. Logan asked, what are some of the more involved projects that we put together? So the certificate program, as you know, has 3 courses, each of which build on each other. The project complexity sort of increases as we get into the later courses in the series. So the beginning course is kind of a fundamentals. If you know anything about Amazon, let me share this real quick. There's several different certifications that Amazon offers, and they all kind of connect together somehow. So let me kind of show you this. So this is, the types of certifications that they have and kind of their hierarchy. So at the very bottom, you'll see there's this cloud practitioner, right? So this is the sort of orientation, the understanding the fundamentals, and this is a sort of a breadth, but not super deep. So the cloud practitioner is the first course that will be offered this winter. The second course is what we call the architecting course, and that's kind of more in this area of the solutions architect. So you'll see there's foundation level certifications, there's associate level certifications, and then there's professional level certifications.
Hey Darren, let me jump in. I'm not seeing it on my screen. It says it's started sharing, but I can't see it. Is anybody else seeing the graphic that Darren is displaying? Maybe it's just my local machine here.
Let's see.
Oh, they can see it. Okay, so it's just me.
Okay. So the architecting series is where we get into projects that are far more complicated, whereas at the foundation level, the final challenge labs that we have involve deploying a redundant fault-tolerant web architecture where you have a couple of web servers. They're backed by a couple of databases. You've got a load balancer in front of them. We've got auto-scaling enabled. So it's an architecture that you might find to support. Like for example, we run our local website on Amazon, and this is the kind of similar architecture that we use. So it's best practice, typical architecture for some web server platform. So that's kind of the bigger project that we tackle in the foundation series. The architecting course has, we dive deeper into different areas of, redundancy, fault tolerance, more on, building scalable architectures. So, some of those projects, Kurt and I are still kind of working back and forth. One of the options we've done in the past is allow students to, pick a particular final project for that course, which is, something we'll do for the architecting course. So we're open to suggestions, but that should give you an idea of kind of what some of the projects look like and their applicability. Did that answer your question, Logan?
I would say another question that we've been asked often is about the background to get into this program. And if you come from an IT background or a computer science or a computer engineering background, obviously you have plenty of the baseline knowledge required to achieve some of this stuff. But I think one of the things that Darren and I really have addressed is we've been teaching students without that background, without that IT background. And so I'd say in a very short time, we can bring somebody that, comes from a background where they are using technical skills, but maybe have not had the IT training or IT experience. I think actually we're pretty good at that. Darren comes from a really deep background in development and managing IT infrastructure. And I come from a background of lots of teaching of very intelligent people that don't necessarily have that exposure. So I think together we're able to kind of address anybody that does not have that background, and we use lots of analogies in teaching some of those things. And so we try to use analogies of telephones and tools and things that people are familiar with in order to translate those concepts into IT. So we're pretty confident that we can bring somebody up to speed pretty quick to get to the level of competence you need to be successful with cloud technologies.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll add to that real quick and just say, if you've had no exposure to any cloud technology, the Foundations course is a great place to start. There's no real prerequisites other than that sort of generalized IT background. But again, Kurt and I do a good job of filling that in for you. So you can really start from almost nothing. Whereas the architecting course is really designed for someone that has done a little bit of work in AWS, is kind of familiar with some of the foundational services. And then we kind of jump right into, expanding on those services and then covering sort of the more deeper use cases and, again, focus on scalability, fault tolerance, that kind of thing. So that should help gauge which first course is right for you. Okay, so I've got a question. You see that question, Kurt?
I do. What is the time estimate for projects each week outside of class time? And so we schedule two hours of sessions each week. So that's 4 hours of synchronous class meetings. And then we're anticipating kind of 3 to 4 hours a week outside of class. And that's kind of our target for what we're designing for. So it's about 8 to 10 hours total per week outside total commitment for the program. Right, sessions are 2.5 hours each. Right, so that's 5 hours and then about another 4 outside.
So mostly what you'll be doing outside of class is, again, we've kind of, if you're familiar with teaching methodology, it's kind of that flipped model where the lectures, there's a video of an Amazon employee kind of giving you the basic training about the overview of the course material. Then there's a sort of mini assessment that you can take during your own personal time. And then we focus in class time on, answering some of those questions you may have that you didn't quite get out of the material. We further, give you quizzes, as Kurt mentioned, that reinforce some of the material to kind of highlight areas where you might, have some sticking points. And then we introduce and use some of that time for these challenging labs. We call them challenge labs, or you can look at them as projects. So outside of class, Kurt said it, 4 hours, but just to give you an idea of the kind of stuff you'll do outside of class is pretty straightforward, and we kind of challenge you a little bit more in class so you have that opportunity to engage with us and interface and ask those questions.
Another thing we've had lots of success with the students is we come up with our own simulated certification exam questions. And we call those clicker questions because when we're in class with students, we have little clicker buttons that they click and answer kind of live. But what they are very similar structure to how the certification exams. And so an Amazon certification exam, you go to a testing center, they put you at a computer, and then you have a certain time to go through 50 to 120 questions, depending on which exam it is. And you basically just have the chance to read the multiple choice questions, select your answers, and then submit it and move on. And so that's kind of the format we use for our clicker questions. And the thing we found is that in addition to practicing the exam questions, it also gives us a good chance to explain why these answers are correct or why the ones that are incorrect are incorrect. So it gives us a really good basis for discussing some of those exam details.
I see a few more people have joined, so we've just been kind of giving an overview of kind of how we teach the class, what the course is composed of, and then stopping from time to time to answer questions. Is there anyone that's recently joined or otherwise that has a question you'd like us to answer?
So another question we often get are, why are you so focused on AWS and the Amazon technology? Darren, would you address why we use Amazon?
Yeah, so we here at Cal Poly, which is we have this partnership with AWS, and we've made a decision. We evaluated other cloud providers, primarily Azure and GCP, and we made a clear decision that we were headed towards Amazon's cloud. And so with most of these cloud courses, the concepts are really similar across cloud providers, that you could take some of the content and really apply the fundamental concepts to other cloud providers. But at some level, each of these cloud providers has efficiencies that are inherent within their own platform. And so we kind of had to make a decision, and since Cal Poly has partnered with Amazon, and we are moving our entire data center over to Amazon as we speak, it was a good selection for us. So the material that we focus on is generally Amazon material, and you will be the most efficient. And again, the certifications that we're driving towards are AWS certifications. The obvious reason from a market perspective is that is obviously the biggest magic quadrant. If you look at Gartner studies, they're far and above ahead any of the other cloud providers. So in terms of Cal Poly's decision, as well as marketability, we thought this was a natural fit. If you're looking for a certification right now, the highest in-demand certification are the AWS certifications. So we had that background, we were headed that direction, and realized market demand matched all that. So that was kind of how we ended up teaching Amazon specifically.
But it's funny because I often say, well, we teach in an agnostic way, which means it doesn't really matter which provider you go with. So, the categories that we start with are kind of the compute technologies, the networking, the database, and the security. And so those are the four concepts that would apply no matter which cloud provider you go with. And, they all have slightly different implementations of those, but the core fundamentals are pretty agnostic. It doesn't really matter which technology or which provider you go with.
So I got a question here that I'm going to answer. The question is, do we provide vouchers for certification? So part of the material that we'll present, again, the goal is to get you certified in Amazon. We will give you a voucher for a free practice exam. Amazon has their Amazon-based materials that are based on Amazon questions. So we will get you a voucher for that practice exam, as well as a discount on the actual exams. So the exam price for the foundation level is a $100 exam. We will get you a 50% off of that, as well as the architecting exam is a $150 exam, and we'll also have a 50% off coupon for that as well.
So Darren, maybe we'll try to address how the three courses go together with the certifications. And would you mind if I tried to play that video that we made trying to tie those together?
That does a great job, I think, of explaining.
All right, let me see if I can pull it up here.
Let me try to paint the picture of the holistic view here. And so we have these three courses. We have fundamentals, which leads to architecting, which leads to advanced special topics. Following each of those courses, there's a possible AWS certification that's tied to it. The first one is Cloud Practitioner. The second one is Cloud Solutions Architect. And the third one has several categories, including big data or machine learning or artificial intelligence or database management or development. So those are the certifications that are possible.
AWS certificates are separate entities that are administered by AWS itself. There are 5 sort of fundamental certifications and there are many specialty certifications. Those are administered through AWS testing centers. Our courses are intended to prepare you for those. The material that we use draws from the AWS material that are meant for certification.
Those 3 courses, they lead to this professional certificate, and it's the professional certificate that we see leads to these career opportunities. We have the deep dive cloud technologists. They would be the ones that go off and become a specialist in cloud technologies. We also see the one that interfaces with cloud technologists. So maybe they're a team leader or they interface with other companies that have cloud technologists. So that would be somebody that interfaces. And then the third category is the one that's, I would say, most closely to my career as an industrial engineer, and it's something I call an analyst. Somebody that would be able to use this infrastructure to collect data, analyze the data, and then make good business decisions based on that data.
How'd that come through, Darren? Did it broadcast okay?
Yeah, it's a little pixelated,
Yeah.
but I think it was clear enough.
This course is better than other alternatives and other online.
I'll just show that one image again, that kind of, now that we've sort of talked about it. So, that video again tries to relate. This is just from an Amazon perspective, what those certifications are. So again, just to kind of map that back to what AWS certifications exist as a result of that. The foundation level is the first course, that's this bottom one. And then the solutions architect associate. And let me just pause for a minute and say the reason we chose the solutions architect first is because solutions architect role is really understanding the services as a whole and how they fit together and how to architect, scalable solutions. There's a lot of overlap between these 3 associate level certifications, and we might add a developer or a SysOps one in the future. But now, I started with the solutions architect and I have the developer. It seemed to make sense to start with the solutions architect because that really gives you an overview of all of the services, whereas the developer and the system SysOps course would focus more uniquely on skills that are used by just a developer or just a SysOps administrator. So that's kind of why we chose this first. And so the last course in the series is kind of over here on the specialty side. You see Amazon now offers, after you've achieved one of the other certifications at the associate level, you can get a specialty cert in a particular area. So if you have a job role, that's in one of these domains, the idea is that you get one of these certs. And so the last course in the series is intended to give you guys an overview of each of these categories to decide, if that's an area of specialty you'd like to develop. So it's kind of a quick, sort of snippet of, what would it be like to be a big data analyst, or, what is it like to specialize in machine learning or, writing Alexa skills. So we'll kind of cover all of those things in just briefly to give you an idea of what a path in that direction looks like. So.
Let's just catch up on the questions a little bit there, Darren. So I see one on how much is the cost of each program. So the tuition for the Cal Poly course is $1,200 a quarter. And it looks like the question about the alumni discount. So I think there's an alumni discount too that's a couple $100 per session or per quarter. And then there's also, Darren, did you talk about the cost of the certification exams? I've forgotten if you've already addressed that.
Yeah, I briefly mentioned it. So the foundation level cert is $100 with the 50% discount, so it ends up being $50, and then the associate level is $150, 50% off, so $75 to take just the certification exam. So there's another question from Steve. Did you see that, Kurt? I'd be happy to answer it.
Yeah, I did. And Steve, yeah, we did talk about that briefly. And Darren and I were mentioning that we actually take a lot of pride in being able to take somebody without a lot of background and experience and bring them very quickly up to the background knowledge they need to be successful. Darren, why don't you address it a little more specifically?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the reality is the world we're moving into, programming and scripting is going to become a necessity. And one of the reasons Kurt and I love working with AWS so much is many of their services are scriptable, right? So, we live in an era now where I can launch, a compute environment that's the same size as Lawrence Livermore Laboratory in 10 minutes because, there are tools now to script that. So, we will go through, some of the basic fundamentals, to achieve success in Amazon. So there is no prior knowledge required, but you will learn that as part of our course.
And the specifics there, Steve, it's funny that the students Darren and I are teaching this quarter, almost 80% of them are business majors. And so when we ask them to SSH into a Linux box and issue some commands, and they freaked out the first time because they'd never worked with a command line interface before. But by about the third week and them doing it over and over, they're off and running and they're issuing their own commands. So like I say, Darren and I really enjoy taking somebody without that background and bringing them up to speed. The nice balance between Darren and I is Darren comes from a really deep background in development. And while I've had some programming in my career, I always call myself a script kiddie, which is basically I search the internet until I find the piece of code that is close to what I want to do, and then I spend my time trying to kind of correct that code to make it do exactly what I want to do. So I think there's room in this area for somebody, in between those two extremes.
There's another question from Vu about are the projects in the curriculum such that you can show to potential employers? Kurt and I are pretty flexible. I like the idea of having projects, especially, kind of through the extended ed. That really makes sense. So certainly we could as a group come up with some project ideas that, you could add to a portfolio that you could kind of show and definitely during an interview highlight. I work with a lot of students here at my current job, and they've found a lot of the projects that we've worked on are beneficial to include in their portfolio and their resume. So Kurt and I will definitely brainstorm so that we can craft some projects that are worthy of portfolio material. That's a great idea.
It's a pretty good opportunity too. So we provide an Amazon environment to do our work for class in that, of course, you'll lose access to after the class is over. But one of the things that Amazon provides is they have the ability to offer you a free account, and many of the resources are free for the first year as you learn to use them. And so I was just thinking of some of the projects that you could do on your free site that you could then show an employer, something like develop your own web-based application, or one of the things I was just doing this week was learning how to use the recognition service at AWS, which is basically you send it image files and it does image recognition and celebrity recognition and comparing images and things like that. So you could develop an application using some of those services and show an employer of some pretty amazing things, right? Like amazing deep learning and machine learning algorithms that Amazon has basically made available to the world, to the public, for a very, very small amount of money when you're using them at low volume like we do.
AWS has turned Kurt and I into superheroes. Using their services, we can build stuff that's, by ourselves would take years. So it won't be hard to come up with projects that are impressive using Amazon services.
Well, what do you think, Darren? Are we starting to run out of steam unless we get some more questions?
Yeah, I'm just curious if anyone else has more questions.
I was just looking back over our materials to see if there's anything worth pulling back up. All right, maybe we'll give it one more minute. Oh, here we go. Thanks for the info. That's good. I've completed all. If I've completed, will I know enough to qualify for a cloud engineer position? What would you say about that one, Darren?
I mean, part of all this comes experience. So, I mean, the material that we cover and the certifications prove that you understand the Amazon services well enough to get certified. The exams are not easy. You know, some of the associate level exams have an even lower pass rate. I've heard as low as 60%. So if you can demonstrate to an employer that you can pass an Amazon certification exam, that in itself I think goes a long way. But I think what our program adds is that practical use of it, not just being able to regurgitate some book knowledge, is really starting to understand the fundamentals. By the end of our cloud practitioner course, I mean, students start launching instances. They know what they're doing. I mean, and we don't even have to tell them anymore. Just say, go launch an eStudents and log into it and get it connected to in a private subnet, and boom, like they instantly know how to do that. And it's that fluency, that cloud fluency that you'll get from the program by not only getting the Amazon material, but then, the kind of additional challenges that Kurt and I will throw at you. So, I mean, I think your ability to survive an interview after this professional certificate is pretty high. I mean, not only will you get all the material and just the certifications alone, I mean, I've put those on my LinkedIn profile, I have my little badges, and I'm amazed at how many, solicitations I get for potential interviews just on those certifications alone. So the combination of getting those certifications and then going through this course and doing these projects, I think you'll find that your employability goes way, way up. So I would say yes.
All right, what do you say we call it a day?
Sounds good. Thanks, you guys. And if you have any other questions, you can check out the website, cloudacademy.calpoly.edu, and we have contact information on there as well. So if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out or check out the website for more info.